The night was quiet in Busan when everything changed. Lee Tai-ho sat alone in the global signal array, drinking cold coffee and watching screens filled with static. He was 26 years old, and this was his third year working the night shift. Nothing ever happened on the night shift. That was why they gave it to junior officers like him. But tonight, at exactly 3:47 in the morning, one of his screens flickered. Then another. Then all of them at once. Tai-ho put down his coffee. His hands were shaking as he leaned forward. The signal was unlike anything in the database. It was not random noise from a distant star. It was not a satellite malfunction. It was structured, organized, intentional. It was a message. He ran every test he knew. He called his supervisor, who called her supervisor, who called someone in the government. Within 6 hours, the small monitoring station in Busan was filled with people in suits who did not smile and ask questions Tai-ho could not answer. Within 12 hours, the message was decoded. It was not a greeting. It was a summons. 3 days later, Kong Jin-ho received a phone call that pulled him away from his quiet life. He was 41 years old, an astrophysicist who preferred stars to people. He had spent 15 years studying the possibility of life beyond Earth, never truly believing he would find it. Now life had found them instead. The emergency council met in a bunker beneath. Seoul leaders from 12 nations sat around a long table, their faces pale under harsh lights. Jin-ho was not a leader. He was a scientist. But someone had decided that scientists should speak first. "Tell us what we know," the Korean president said. Jin-ho stood. His voice was steady, though his heart was not. 3 days ago, we received a transmission from outside our solar system. It came from a group that calls itself the Velwar Collective. They claim to represent over 4,000 intelligent species across the galaxy. The room was silent. Jin-ho continued. They say they have been watching us for a long time. Centuries, perhaps longer. And now they have decided we are ready for something they call evaluation. A general from America spoke. Evaluation of what? Of whether we deserve to exist as a free species? Jin-ho let the words hang in the air. According to the message, species that fail evaluation are either subjugated or quarantined, locked away on their homeworlds forever. No contact. No trade. No growth in species that pass? The president asked. They join the collective as junior members. They receive technology, knowledge, access to galactic civilization. Jin-ho paused. But the message did not tell us what the evaluation measures, only that it will begin in 30 days. The argument started immediately. Some wanted to prepare weapons. Others wanted to send messages of peace. A few suggested hiding. As if 8 billion humans could hide from beings who had watched them for centuries. Park Yuna listened to all of it in silence. She was 53 years old, a former military strategist who now served as Earth's defense coordinator. She had spent her career preparing for wars that never came. Now a war had come that she could not fight. When the arguing stopped, she spoke. We need information, she said. We cannot prepare for an evaluation we do not understand. We cannot fight an enemy we have not seen. Before we do anything, we need to know who these Valores truly are and what they truly want, it was decided. Humanity would wait and watch and try to learn. 7 days later, the Valori arrived. The ship appeared at the edge of the solar system, beyond the orbit of Neptune. It was larger than anything humans had ever built. Larger than cities. Larger than some moons. It moved slowly, deliberately, like a creature that had no need to hurry because nothing in the universe could threaten it. Tai-ho was the first to see the images from the deep space telescopes. He stared at the screen for a long time, trying to understand the scale of what he was seeing. Then he sent the images to his superiors and went outside to look at the sky. The stars looked the same as always, small and distant and cold. But now, Tai-ho knew that somewhere out there, behind those tiny points of light, something vast was watching. The Valori sent another message when they reached lunar orbit. This time, there was a voice. People of Earth, I am High Arbiter Kesson of the Velori Collective. We have come to begin your evaluation. You have 23 days to demonstrate your worthiness. Cooperate, and your transition will be peaceful. Resist, and your fate will be decided for you. The voice was calm, pleasant even, but there was something beneath it that made Jinho's skin crawl. It was the tone of someone who had done this many times before, someone who already knew how it would end. That night, Jinho could not sleep. He sat in his small apartment looking at old photographs of his parents. His sister, his niece, who had just started school. He thought about all the ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that their future was being decided by beings they had never met. He thought about standing before those beings and speaking for all of humanity. The weight of it pressed down on him until he could barely breathe. Then his computer screen flickered. A new message appeared, sent through channels that should have been impossible to access. It was from someone on the Valori ship, someone who called themselves Observer Threll. The message was short. It contained only a file and 3 words. You should know. Jinho opened the file. It was a list of species. 17 names he did not recognize. Next to each name was a single word, failed. He read further. The file contained records of what happened to those species after they failed evaluation. Some were conquered and enslaved. Others were sealed on their worlds, their technology disabled, their populations left to stagnate for eternity. A few had tried to resist. Those species no longer existed at all. Jinho sat in the darkness, reading about civilizations that had risen and fallen while humanity was still learning to make fire. Each one had faced the same choice Earth now faced. Each one had failed. The question that kept him awake was simple. Why would someone on the Velour ship send this to him? Was it a warning? A threat? Or something else entirely? He did not know. But as the first light of dawn touched his window, Jinho understood one thing clearly. The evaluation had already begun. And somewhere in the stars, someone was watching to see what humanity would do next. The shuttle that carried the human delegation to the Valori ship was the finest vessel Earth had ever built. Inside the Valori landing bay, it looked like a toy. Kung Jinho stood at the front of the delegation, his heart pounding as the doors opened. Behind him were diplomats, scientists, and translators from 12 nations. Beside him was Choi Hannah, xenobiologist who had spent her life studying life that might exist beyond Earth. Now she would meet it face to face. The Valori who greeted them were tall and thin, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their eyes were large and dark and held no warmth. They moved with perfect grace, as if every step had been calculated centuries in advance. "Welcome to the collective vessel," one of them said. The translation device made the words sound almost human. "I am Observer Threll. I will guide you during your stay." Jinho recognized the name. This was the one who had sent him the secret file, but Threll's face showed nothing. No hint that they had ever communicated. The tour began. What Jinho saw in the next hours changed. Everything he understood about the universe. The Valori ship was not just a vessel. It was a floating city home to representatives from hundreds of species. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated or crawled or moved in ways Jinho could not describe. All of them wore the same symbol on their clothing, the mark of the collective. "How many species belong to the collective?" Hannah asked. 4,312, Threll answered. "Humanity will be 4,313. If you pass, and if we don't pass," Threll's skin flickered blue for a moment, "then you will not be counted." The delegation was taken to meet High Arbiter Kessin in a chamber at the center of the ship. Kessin was different from the other Valor, older, larger. His skin did not shift colors, but remained a steady gray, like stone. He sat on a raised platform looking down at the humans like a teacher, examining disappointing students. "Your species is young," Kessin said. "You have existed for only 200,000 years. You have had technology for less than 300. In the scale of galactic civilization, you are infants." "We learn quickly," Jinho said. "All young species believe that." Kessin's voice was patient but cold. "The evaluation measures 3 things: technological advancement, social cohesion, existential stability. Based on our observations, humanity scores poorly in all three categories. What do those terms mean? One of the diplomats asked. Technological advancement measures your ability to solve problems and create tools. Social cohesion measures your ability to work together as a species. Existential stability measures your ability to survive without destroying yourselves. Paused. Your species has nearly destroyed itself 17 times in the last century alone. You fight wars over land, resources, and beliefs. You poison your own world. You are, by every measure we use, unstable. The delegation was silent. There was nothing to say. Everything Kessin described was true. While the diplomats met with Kessin, Choi Hannah was granted access to the Valori Biological Archives. She walked through halls filled with genetic records of every species in the collective. Each one was tagged and cataloged. Their entire evolutionary history mapped down to the smallest detail. Hannah searched for Earth. For humans. What she found made her stop breathing. Humanity had no genetic markers that matched any other species in the archive. Not even close. Every other species in the collective shared certain base codes. Tiny signatures that showed they had all developed from seeds planted by the Valori millions of years ago. The Valori had guided evolution across the galaxy, shaping life to their specifications, but not Earth. Earth was wild, natural, untouched. Hannah did not know what this meant, but she knew it was important. Back on Earth, Park Yuna was not waiting quietly. While the delegation toured the Valori ship, she coordinated with military leaders around the world. Every weapon was checked. Every soldier was briefed. Every plan was made and remade. She knew they could not win a war against the Valor. The technology gap was too vast. But Yuna had not built her career on hope. She had built it on preparation. If they decide we fail, she told her officers, we need options. Not good options. Just options. The options were few and terrible, but they existed. On day 15 of the evaluation, the Valori began their tests. They did not announce them. They simply happened. A massive earthquake struck Indonesia. A virus appeared in Brazil. A chemical spill poisoned rivers in Europe. Each disaster was contained, localized, controlled. Each one was clearly artificial. Humanity responded the way humanity always did. Rescue teams flew across borders. Doctors worked without sleep. Ordinary people gave money and blood and time to help strangers they would never meet. The Valori watched and recorded everything. Interesting, observer Threll said, reviewing the data. They help each other even when it costs them personally. Inefficient resource allocation, Kessin replied. Emotional decision-making. Further evidence of instability, but Threll noticed something Kessin did not. When humans worked together, something changed in their biological readings. Their brain patterns synchronized. Their emotional states aligned. It was subtle, barely detectable, but it was there. He added a note to his personal files and said nothing. On day 18, Li Taiho made a discovery that shattered the last of humanity's hope. While analyzing Valori communication patterns, he found evidence that they had been observing Earth for over 2,000 years. They had watched humans build empires and tear them down. They had watched wars and plagues and revolutions. They had gathered all this data not to understand humanity, but to confirm what they already believed. The evaluation was not a test. It was a formality. The Valori had already decided that humanity would fail. They were simply following procedure. Taiho sent his findings to Ginho on the Valori ship. When Jinho read them, he felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not fear. It was something worse. It was the realization that nothing they did would matter that night. Choi Hannah found something that changed everything. Deep in the Valori archives, hidden behind layers of security, there was a locked file. The label read, Anomalies. She should not have been able to access it, but someone had left a door open. A small gap in the security. As if someone wanted her to find it, inside were records of species marked as different. Species that did not fit the patterns. Species that the Valori had watched with fear instead of contempt. The file on humanity was there. It was empty except for 2 words: under observation. But the file had been accessed recently. Someone high in the Valerie hierarchy was paying very close attention to Earth. Hannah thought about the mysterious messages Jinho had received. She thought about the unlocked doors and the open files. Someone inside the collective was helping them. The question was why. She sent a message to Jinho with what she had found. As she pressed send, she noticed something else in the archive. A note attached to the anomaly files. It read, "Previous anomalies resulted in fundamental restructuring of collective hierarchy. Handle with extreme caution." Hannah stared at the words for a long time. Whatever made humanity different, it was not just unusual, it was dangerous. Dangerous enough to scare beings who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. And somewhere in the vast ship around her, someone was counting on that. The news leaked on day 20. Nobody knew who told the media. Perhaps a diplomat who could not keep the secret. Perhaps a soldier who thought people deserved to know. It did not matter. Within hours, everyone on Earth knew that humanity was being judged by beings from the stars. And humanity was failing. The world broke into chaos, in Seoul. Crowds filled the streets, some praying, some screaming, some simply standing in silence. In New York, people raided stores for supplies they would never need. When Mumbai, a new religion, formed overnight, declaring the Valori to be gods who had come to punish humanity for its sins. Park Yuna watched the reports from her command center, her face carved from stone. She had spent her life preparing for emergencies, but no training could prepare anyone for this. "They're scared," her aide said. "Can you blame them?" "No," Yuna replied. "But scared people make mistakes. We cannot afford mistakes now." On the Valori ship, Kong Gun-ho watched the same reports. He saw his planet tearing itself apart, and he felt something inside him break. He had come here believing he could make a difference, that if he found the right words, asked the right questions, humanity might have a chance. Now he understood the truth. The Valori did not care about words. They had made their decision long ago. He returned to Earth on day 21, hollow and exhausted. Park Yuna met him at the landing site. "Tell me something useful," she said. Jinho looked at her with empty eyes. "There's no winning this. The evaluation is a formality. They decided we would fail before they even arrived. Everything we do, everything we say, they already have an answer prepared." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Then we stopped trying to win their game." "What does that mean?" "It means we play our own." That night, Observer Threll broke protocol, sent a secret communication directly to Choi Hannah, using channels even the High Arbiter could not monitor. "Meet me," the message said. "Cargo Base 7. Come alone." Akana should have refused. She should have reported the message to her superiors. Instead, she went. Threll was waiting in the shadows of the empty bay. His skin flickered nervously, colors dancing across his surface like flames. "You found the anomaly files," he said. It was not a question. "You left them open for me." "Yes." Threll stepped closer. "I have watched your species for 60% of your years. Longer than any other observer. I have seen things that do not fit our models. Things that frighten the Council." "What things?" "You call it many names. Love, hope, sacrifice, the willingness to suffer for others, even strangers. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today." Threll's voice dropped to a whisper. "These traits should not exist. They serve no evolutionary purpose. They make your species weaker, not stronger, and yet they persist." Hannah waited. "The collective was built on logic," Threll continued. "On efficiency. On the elimination of waste. We spread across the galaxy by removing everything that did not serve our purposes, including emotion, including hope." He paused. "But your species still has these things, and they spread. Spread. The species we have subjugated, the ones who serve us now, they were not always empty. Once, long ago, they felt what you feel. We removed those feelings because they made control difficult." Threll's skin went dark. "But when your people came aboard this ship, something changed. The subjugated species who saw you, who heard you speak, They began to remember. We detected emotional activity in beings who had shown none for millennia. Hannah understood. You're afraid we'll wake them up. The council is afraid. I am curious. Threll reached out and touched her hand. His skin was cold, but the gesture was unmistakably human. 4 million years ago, there was another anomaly. A species like yours, they refused to submit. They inspired others to resist. The collective nearly fell. What happened to them? They destroyed themselves rather than be controlled. Threll pulled back. The council will not allow that mistake again. They will not give humanity the chance to spread what you carry. Then why are you telling me this? Threll was silent for a long moment. Because I have watched your species for 60 years. I have seen your wars and your cruelty. But I have also seen a mother die to save her child. I have seen strangers run into fire to rescue people they never met. I have seen old enemies embrace when tragedy struck. His voice was barely audible now. I do not understand these things, but I find myself wishing that I did. On day 23, Park Yuna addressed the world. She stood before cameras in Seoul, broadcast to every screen on every continent. Behind her was a simple flag, a blue circle on white, the symbol humanity had chosen to represent itself to the stars. People of Earth, she began, you know what we face? You know what the Valori have decided? They have judged us and found us unworthy. They expect us to beg, to surrender, to accept whatever fate they choose for us. She paused. The world waited. We will not beg. We will not surrender. And we will not accept a fate chosen by beings who do not know us. Her voice grew stronger. I do not know if we can fight them. I do not know if we can survive. But I know this. We are human. We have faced impossible odds before. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We have climbed mountains and crossed oceans and touched the moon. Not because we were strong, but because we refused to stop. She raised her chin. Whatever comes next, we will face it together. Not as nations, not as races, not as enemies, as humanity. One species, one people, one voice. Around the world, something shifted. The riots slowed. The panic faded. People looked at each other differently, seeing not strangers but family. The divisions that had seemed so important yesterday felt small and foolish today. On the Valor ship. High Arbiter Kessin watched the broadcast. He had seen thousands of species face evaluation. He had seen them beg and threaten and bargain and weep. He had never seen this. He had never seen a species choose dignity over survival. It's interesting, he murmured. But his skin had gone pale, and his hands were not entirely steady. In the cargo bay, Choi Hannah was still thinking about what Threll had told her, about the anomaly 4 million years ago, about the species that had nearly changed everything. She accessed the archives one more time, searching for anything else that might help. And there, buried in a file she had overlooked before, she found it. A warning from the ancient past. The anomalies were not threats because they were powerful. They were threats because they carried something that could not be controlled. Something that spread from mind to mind, from heart to heart, faster than any weapon. They carried hope. And hope, the ancient Vellery had learned, is the one thing that could bring down empires. Hannah read the warning 3 times. Then she began to smile. She finally understood what humanity had that the Valor feared. It was not technology or weapons or even intelligence. It was the ability to make others believe that things could be better, and that, she realized, was a power that no cage could contain. Choi Hannah returned to Earth on day 25 with knowledge that changed everything. She gathered the council in the bunker beneath Seoul, Kong Jinho, Park Yuna-lee, Taiho, and the leaders of 12 nations. They listened in stunned silence as she explained what she had discovered. We are different, she said. Not because of our technology or our history. We are different because of something in our minds. Something the Valor removed from every other species they encountered. What is it? Jinho asked. The Valori call it resonance. When humans feel strong emotions together, our minds create a kind of field. It is weak in individuals. But when millions of us feel the same thing at the same time, it becomes something powerful. She pulled up data on the screens around the room. During Park Yuna's speech, our satellites detected an energy pattern we have never seen before. It spread across the planet, following the broadcast. Wherever people watched, wherever they felt hope or determination or unity, the pattern grew stronger. And the Velori can detect this? Yuna asked. They have been detecting it for centuries. That is why they came now. Our population is larger than ever before. Our communication is faster. When we unite, the resonance field is strong enough to reach other minds. Anna paused. Including the minds of the species the Velori have enslaved. The room was silent. They are not afraid of our weapons, Hannah continued. They are afraid of our hearts. They are afraid that if we unite, truly unite, we will wake up billions of beings who have been sleeping for millions of years. And once they wake up, the Velori cannot put them back to sleep. Junho leaned forward. Can we control this? Can we use it deliberately? I do not know. But I know one thing. Anna looked at each face around the table. The Velori expects us to fight or surrender. They have plans for both. They do not have a plan for what happens if we simply stand together. The plan came together over the next 3 days. It was simple because it had to be. There is no time for complexity. The evaluation would end on day 30. Whatever humanity did, it had to happen before then. Baek Sun-woo was given command of the United Fleet. He was 61 years old, a veteran of conflicts he never talked about. His face was weathered and scarred, and his eyes had seen too much death. But when he spoke to his pilots, his voice was calm. We are not going to fight, he told them. We have no chance of winning a battle. Our job is to be present, to stand between Earth and whatever comes, to show the universe that we face the end with open eyes. The pilots came from every nation. Americans and Russians and Chinese and Korean and Indian, former enemies who had spent decades training to kill each other. Now they checked each other's equipment and shared photographs of their families and laughed at jokes that crossed every language and soul. Lee Tai-ho worked without sleep to prepare the global broadcast. Every transmitter on Earth would carry the same signal at the same moment. Every screen, every speaker, every device. For 10 minutes, humanity would speak with one voice. What do we say? Someone asked. Ginho had the answer. We tell them who we are, not our achievements or our technology. Our stories, our hopes, the things we love and the things we fear, and the reasons we keep going. We show them what it means to be human. Kang Jin-ho returned to the Velori ship one final time. High Arbiter Kessin received him in the Great Chamber, surrounded by observers from 100 species. This was meant to be the end. The formal announcement of humanity's failure. The beginning of subjugation. But Ginho had not come to hear the verdict. I have a question, he said. His voice was broadcast to every human on Earth. They watched on screens and phones and tablets. Billions of people holding their breath. Kessin's stone-gray skin showed no expression. Speak. You have watched us for thousands of years. You have seen our worst moments. Our wars, our cruelty, our failures. Jin-ho stepped forward. But you have also seen something else. You have seen us help strangers. You have seen us sacrifice for people we will never meet. You have seen us hope when there was no reason to hope. Emotional instability, Kessin said. A weakness we have documented thoroughly? Then why are you afraid? The chamber went silent. Around the room, the other observers shifted. They had never heard a young species speak to a high arbiter this way. We are not afraid, Kessin said. But his voice was not entirely steady. You are. I have seen your records. The anomaly files. The warnings about species who carried what we carry. Ginho spread his hands. If we are so weak, so unstable, so unworthy, then why do you need to control us? Why not just ignore us and let us destroy ourselves? Kessin was quiet for a long moment. You do not understand what you are. Then explain it to me. Your species generates a psychic resonance field. When you experience emotions together, it amplifies and spreads. This is not unique. Many species had this ability once. We removed it because it made them difficult to manage. But your species developed naturally without our guidance. You still have what others lost, and that frightens you. It destabilizes. Everywhere your broadcasts have reached, we have detected awakening in subjugated populations. Beings who have not felt hope in millions of years are beginning to feel it again because of you. Kessen's voice hardened. This cannot be allowed to continue. Ginho smiled. It was a small smile, tired but real. Then you should have left us alone. Back on Earth, Park Yuna gave the signal. Every transmitter activated at once. Every screen lit up with the same image. Ordinary humans telling their stories. A teacher in Japan talking about the student who changed her life. A doctor in Kenya describing the child she saved against impossible odds. An old man in Brazil remembering the wife he lost and the grandchildren who made him want to keep living. Billions of voices, sharing billions of stories. Not about power or technology or achievement, about love, about loss, about the small moments that made life worth living. And as the story spread, the resonance field grew. Satellites detected it first. A wave of energy spreading out from Earth following the broadcast signals. It reached the Valori fleet in lunar orbit. It washed over the great ship where Kessen and Ginho stood facing each other. It touched the minds of every subjugated species aboard, in the cargo bays. Workers stopped what they were doing. In the engine rooms, technicians looked up from their consoles. In the breeding chambers, where the Valori grew their servants, creatures who had never known anything but obedience felt something stir in the depths of their minds, something they had not felt in millions of years. Hope, observer. Thorell watched his sensors and felt his skin shift through colors he had never displayed before. It's working, he whispered. It's actually working. Hi, Arbiter. Kessen felt it too. He felt his carefully ordered world trembling at its foundations. He felt control slipping away, replaced by something wild and unpredictable and terrifying. Enough, he said. His voice was sharp with fear. This evaluation is concluded. Humanity is deemed a threat to galactic stability. Subjugation protocols will begin immediately. On the screens behind him, the Valori fleet began to move. Weapons powered up. Engines ignited. The great ships turned toward Earth, ready to end the threat before it could spread further. But Ginho did not look afraid. He looked at Kessen with something that might have been pity. You can destroy us, he said. You have the power. But you cannot destroy what we have already shared. Those feelings are out there now, spreading from mind to mind. You cannot put them back. San's hands clenched. We can try. Yes, Ginho agreed. You can try. But you will fail. Because that is what hope does. It survives. It grows. It spreads. And eventually it wins. The fleet continued toward Earth, but in the ships. Among the subjugated crews, something was changing. For the first time in millions of years, the slaves of the Valor Collective were beginning to remember what it felt like to dream. The Valori fleet filled the sky above Earth. Beak Sunwoo led humanity's response. 300 ships, the entire combined fleet of every nation, rising to meet a force that could destroy them in seconds. His pilots knew they could not win. They flew anyway. Remember why we are here, Sunwoo said over the common channel. Not to fight. Not to die. To witness. Whatever happens next, the universe will know that we did not hide. The ships took position between Earth and the Valori Armada. They were like insects facing giants, but they held their line. On the surface, 8 billion humans watched the sky. They had stopped running, stopped panicking, stopped fighting each other. They simply stood together, families and strangers, enemies and friends. Watching the stars and waiting, the resonance field was stronger than ever. It pulsed across the planet, across the solar system, across the gap between worlds. It touched the Valori ships and the beings inside them, and something began to change. Hi. Arbiter Kessen gave the order for the primary weapon. It was a device that could sterilize a planet. Kill every living thing on the surface while leaving the land and water intact. Clean, efficient. The Valori way. Fire, he commanded. But the weapon did not fire. Kessen turned to his weapons officer. a creature from a species that had served the Valori for 2 million years. The officer was standing at his console, hands motionless, staring at nothing. "I gave an order," Kessin said. The officer looked up. There were tears on his face. His species had not produced tears in 100 generations. The Valori had removed that ability long ago. "I remember," the officer whispered. "I remember what it felt like to hope." Across the fleet, the same scene repeated. Officers refused orders. Crews abandoned their posts. Beings who had been slaves since before humanity existed looked at the small blue world below them and felt something they could not name. The Valori command structure, built over millions of years, began to collapse. Kessin watched his perfect order crumbling around him. He had spent his entire existence maintaining control. Now control was slipping away. Carried by a force he could not see or touch or fight, he turned to his personal guard, the most loyal soldiers in the fleet. "Take manual control of the weapon. I will fire it myself." But his guards did not move. They stood frozen, their weapons lowered, their eyes distant. "What is happening to you?" Kessin demanded. One of them spoke. Her voice was rough, unused to forming words. "We are remembering. We are remembering who we were before you made us this." The weapon never fired. In the hours that followed, the Valori collective began to fracture. Messages arrived from across the galaxy. A dozen quarantined worlds had received humanity's broadcast, relayed through Valori communication channels by crews who had been awakened. They were transmitting it onward, passing it from system to system, like a flame spreading through dry grass. On each world, the same thing happened. Beings who had forgotten hope began to remember. Beings who had been told they were worthless began to believe they had value. Beings who had been alone began to reach out to each other. The awakening spread faster than any fleet. Could travel observer Threll found Kong Jin-ho in the observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly below. "The Council is in chaos," Threll said. "Half of them want to destroy your world immediately. The other half want to negotiate. And you." Threll's skin shifted through colors Jin-ho had never seen before. "I want to understand. I have watched your species for 60 years. I have studied your biology, your psychology, your history. I thought I knew what you were, but I did not know this. What changed? When your broadcast reached me, I felt something, a warmth in my mind, a voice telling me that things could be different." Threll touched his chest, where a human would have a heart. "I do not have the structures for emotion. They were removed from my ancestors long ago. But somehow, I felt it anyway." Jin-ho smiled. "That is what hope does. It finds a way." High Arbiter Kessin attempted one final strike. While the fleet was in chaos, he ordered his personal ship toward Earth. Carrying a weapon that could be fired by a single individual, Beak Sunwoo saw him coming. The old pilot did not hesitate. He broke formation and drove his ship directly into Kessin's path, blocking the approach to Earth. "All ships, hold position," Sunwoo ordered. "This one is mine." Kessin's ship was faster, more powerful, more advanced. But Sunwoo had spent 40 years flying, and he knew things that could not be programmed into a computer. He matched every move, blocked every angle, kept himself between Kessin and the planet below. "You cannot stop me," Kessin transmitted. "Your ship is nothing." "I know," Sunwoo replied, "but I can slow you down." Inside the Valori ship, the awakened crew was already moving. They had heard their former master's plan. They had felt the hope from the planet below, and they had made a choice. They deposed Kessin in his own command chair. They disabled his weapon. They transmitted their surrender to the human fleet. It was over. 1 week later, a new council formed. Representatives from Earth, from the awakened species, and from the Valori, who had chosen to change. They met in a chamber that had once been used to judge and condemn. Now it would be used to build something new. Kong Jin-ho addressed the council. He spoke not as a leader or a conqueror, but as a witness. "We did not defeat you," he said. "We do not want to rule you. We are here because we believe something the collective forgot long ago, that connection is stronger than control, that hope is stronger than fear, that the future belongs to everyone, not just the powerful. He paused, looking at the faces around him. Some were human, most were not. All were listening. We offer you nothing except what we offered ourselves, the belief that things can be better, the courage to try, the willingness to fail and try again. He spread his hands. Join us, and we will build a galaxy worth living in. Not perfect, not orderly, but alive. The council voted to reform. It was not unanimous. Change never is, but it was enough. 6 months later, Choi Hana opened the Institute of Resonance Studies on Earth. Scientists from 100 species came to learn about the force that had changed everything. They studied how emotion could bridge the gap between minds. They explored how hope could spread faster than light. Lee Taiho became humanity's first ambassador to the awakening worlds. He traveled from system to system, not bringing technology or weapons, but stories. The same stories that had sparked the awakening. He found that everywhere he went, beings were hungry to hear them. Park Yuna retired. She had spent her life preparing for war, and now there would be no war. She moved to a small house by the sea and spent her days watching the waves. Sometimes she smiled at nothing in particular. She had earned the right. Beek Sunwoo returned to his family. His grandchildren asked him what it felt like to save the world. He told them he had not saved anything. He had just been too stubborn to move, and Kang Jin-ho. He went back to studying the stars. But now, when he looked at the sky, he did not see emptiness. He saw neighbors. He saw possibilities. He saw a future that was just beginning. Centuries passed. The galaxy changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Wars happened. Mistakes were made. But something had shifted in the foundations of civilization. The old way, the way of control and fear and isolation, was dying. The new way, the way of connection and hope and growth, was being born. Historians would later call the era before humanity's awakening the silence. They would describe a galaxy of isolated species, controlled by fear, ruled by beings who had forgotten what it meant to feel. And they would describe what came after, an age of empathy, of cooperation, of genuine connection between minds that had once been strangers. They called this new era the Resonance. On Earth, the story was told and retold. In schools and temples and family gatherings, humans passed down the memory of the days when the stars came to judge them. They remembered how they had faced impossible odds, how they had chosen dignity over survival, how they had stood together when standing together was all they had. And they remembered the words that had been carved into monuments and sung in songs across 100 worlds. Words that captured what humanity had given to the stars. We stood firm. And the stars remembered how to hope. The story ended there, but the story was never really over. Every day, on every world, beings woke up and chose to believe that today could be better than yesterday. They helped strangers and forgave enemies and loved imperfectly and tried. Again, when they failed, they carried the resonance forward, one heart at a time, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, hope continued to spread. Not because it was powerful, not because it was logical, but because it was the one thing that could never truly be destroyed. Because hope, once kindled, burns forever.